marathon winner at CTS Tech for pneumonia detection in X-rays. An ardent speaker and blogger, Mr. Harish has also authored a book by the name of Healthcare Decoded. So the more we speak about him, it seems we are speaking much less, and we are very fortunate enough that Sir has consented to be a speaker in our webinar series under Illume. And this is the fourth webinar under Illume Leadership Talk, and we'd like to hand over to Sir for the remaining of the session.
Thank you so much. That was very kind of you. Uh, so I'm just going to share my screen, right? Can you see me? Can you guys see me?
Yes, sir.
Very good. Just give me a second.
Sir, can I mention a few points to the participants before you start?
Yes, please.
Okay, so the participants are requested to please mute their audio and video while logging in, and whatever questions they have during the session, they can write in the chat box. Shabas will be moderating all the questions later at the end of the session. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to talk about NLP, but I'm going to talk more in terms of practical examples, right? I'm going to show you some of the practical examples which are there rather than just talking about the theoretical aspect. So I'd like to understand from you guys, right? What do you know about NLP, right? Any idea? If you look at this, right, can you make out any information from this? Have you seen any or heard any of these elements or terminologies anywhere? Any idea?
Yes,
Apart
sir.
from
We
me, I
have
like to.
heard the terminologies and the names. We have heard and we have seen these stuffs before. Only the name.
All right. Okay. So what do you do with this data, right? If you have this information, right? Or rather, where is this information coming from?
So all these information are coming from internet.
Internet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, they are coming from hospitals, patient data, and yeah.
Yes. So what kind of patient data?
Medical information.
Anything that
Okay. Medical information. What kind of medical information? If I go down a little bit more deeper.
anything that requires an equipment, technology.
All right. So where?
That needs assistance.
Yes.
Patient.
So in a patient journey, right? When you look at a patient journey, where all is data captured for a patient?
Sir, the data is collected mostly in the patient files, which contains all the information starting from the registration to his treatment and then till discharge.
And what kind of information is there in that?
So can you repeat?
So what kind of information, what kind of data is there in all those touch points, right? You mentioned a few: registration, admission. What kind of data is there in or captured at those touch points?
So about the patient, like patient name, then age, disease, treatment.
Right. So the point which I'm trying to stress, right? You have so much information within the healthcare environment. There is data which has been captured during the patient journey. At the time of admission, the patient fills an admission form. When he's interacting with the physician, right, the physician is going to capture some information for that particular patient in terms of how the patient is feeling, how well the medication is working for that particular patient. All that information is going to be captured. Okay. So in very simple terminology, what we are trying to do is analyze that data. Okay. We are trying to analyze that information, which is probably, you would say, semi-structured or in many cases unstructured also. So that is what we're going to do. That is what we want to look at. So can you tell me a very close by example that you might be using day to day? Every day you use some solution or some tool which has NLP, and it's probably there in your hand as of now also. Do you know any example? You're actually using that every day. Any idea?
So these will
Any
be
thoughts?
included in the electronic medical records. So patient
I'm not
data
talking
and
in general. No, I'm talking in general. In general, leave aside the healthcare aspect for a minute. In general,
okay,
right? In your hand, you're using something which probably
mobile
uses,
phone
yes. And what's there in
or
your mobile phone? What do you do?
smartphones.
Yes,
Uh,
yes.
we we can do regarding healthcare. We can use a health app or uh,
No, in general, not really related to healthcare. So you see, right?
We
You see when you type something on your on Google, right? It does an autocomplete. So it is a very basic level of what you're looking at, in terms of NLP. The other aspect that you do is your spell check. Again, uh, autocorrect is also there on your mobile, right? When you're typing on WhatsApp or in your chat, right? You're trying to, let's say you are entering some information, right? It will tell you that, okay, the spelling is incorrect. The third very simple example is classifying your emails in terms of spam. So there also you're trying to find specific keywords which tells you whether this mail should go into your inbox or this mail should go into your spam folder. This is a very basic and very simple example when you're looking at, in general, what we're talking about in terms of NLP. Now coming to that healthcare aspect, right? I wanted to focus on the healthcare information, right? There is a lot of data which is there in healthcare, okay, in different formats, in different forms. You have so much of information, right? It's very difficult to kind of analyze that information. So on the left hand side, right, you'll notice this information will be there in the history of that particular patient, or on the clinical notes, the physician documentation. All that information will be there in these data elements, right? So what you're going to do, right? We want to put them into a structure. But how do we put them into a structure? Any idea? If I have a entire physician note, right? I mean, leave aside the handwriting of the physician. I know there are a lot of doctors on the call, but leave aside the handwriting of the physician. What or how do you really uh, convert them into something which is understandable by a computer? So very simply put, right, a computer does not understand free text so easily. The computer understands numbers or codes pretty easily. So my question would be, how would you convert the free text which is written over here, right, into something which is understandable by the computer? Any thoughts?
so analyzing the information and using a separate programming language for those information or
Okay.
the inputs that it gave.
Okay. All right. What else? So let's say if I have a statement, right? Patient comes to the hospital complaining of chest pain. So what is important to you from the statement? Or you can take any other statement, right? The patient has been taking aspirin daily for the past 5 days, but still the patient has a chest pain. So if I have this kind of a statement, right, what do I do with that? Any thoughts? What should I do with the data?
we can use some coding language
Okay.
to classify the documents into like ICD. Uh, so
Okay.
all
So
the
what is
patient
ICD?
related. Hello.
Yeah, what is
International,
ICD?
International Classification of Diseases. So
All right.
yeah.
Okay. So Yes. So that is one way, right? So how do you convert that into an ICD code? Any idea? Or who does that?
Medical coders.
Very good. So you have that idea, you have that context.
Yeah.
Now, so that is what you're talking about, right? You look at the left, right? You see a lot of information which is there in that notes, and you want to convert it into a specific coded language or coded numbers, right? So you talked about ICD. Then there is something called as LOINC, which is for lab tests. There is RX norm, NDC, NDFRT, which is talking about medication, right? So like this, right? There are so many other codes which are there. So what we have to do is, right? We have to convert. Obviously, that is one of the most important cases when you're looking at healthcare. We have to convert that data into a structured format. So there are cases related to, or other use cases related to NLP in the insurance industry, in the hospital industry, and the pharma industry. In all of these three areas, right? There are a lot of relevances which are there when you're looking at NLP. So we're going to talk about some of these. Can you tell me what do you see over here? What is this trying to, what am I trying to explain over here?
So the intensity of like humor, if it's
Yeah,
funny or not.
right. So what does that indicate in one word?
A range. Yeah, it indicates a range.
Okay. So this is, how are you feeling if I have this, right? If I have I've come till here, what do you feel?
Not so much excited, but kind of funny.
Yeah, yeah. So in one word, right? If it was not, if it was a sad smiley, what would it indicate?
One is not impressed at all.
Right. So these are all sentiments, right? These are all sentiments which are there. Now, one of the most important areas, right, where NLP can be applied is at a call center. All lot of these healthcare organizations, payers or providers for that matter, have a call center, right? Wherein the patient calls them, they want to check their uh, status of the insurance information, right? And since I was working with a BPO firm in my previous organization, right? There, what was important is how well is the agent speaking with the patient or the end customer. What they wanted to do was they wanted to really focus on the sentiment, okay, and that comes from the way the the agent is really talking to that particular end user. So what you have to do, obviously, first you have to convert that voice to text, and then you start analyzing the text, whether the right words were used. You can also analyze the voice in terms of the pitch and everything, right? But that's a different aspect altogether. So here I'm talking about when you convert the voice into text and analyze that particular text. The other aspect is also in terms of the feedback, right? You write your feedback on Zomato or anywhere else, right? You write your feedback.
Yes, we do.
Yes. So there, right, that feedback also can be analyzed to identify what is the sentiment you're feeling. Is it a positive sentiment? Is it a negative sentiment? That's a very basic example in terms of what you can do with that, you know, data which is really unstructured. The so I'm going to ask you, what does this image possibly depict for you? Any thoughts? What do you think? In a hospital environment, who uses this?
So it is being used for analyzing patient experience, like after or while they were analyzed whether the service or the care given to them is up to expectations or not.
Right. So you're talking about one aspect, that is the patient is giving a feedback, right?
Yeah.
This writing pad can also be used by the physician to write the documents, or this laptop can be used by the physician to enter the clinical notes, right? That's what we kind of talked about earlier. So this is one of the most important use cases is we want to mine this particular data. We want to mine this information. So if you know what a medical coder does, right? The medical coder mines that information which is there in the clinical notes. So practically when you look at it, he's going to look at 7 days of, if the patient was there in the hospital for 7 days, right? That medical coder is going to look at all that information which is there in those notes and try to extract information so that he can do the right billing. So I'll show you a very simple example, all right? I'll show you a very simple example. Yeah. Can you see this? This is an online tool. Okay, this is an online tool called Clamp. All right, you can even go to this site and check this for yourself. So here, right, the only challenge in terms of when you're using this tool, right, the data has to be in a readable format. There isn't a tool good enough to convert the physician's handwriting into an electronic format. All right, it's not really that great. I mean, there aren't many tools like that, uh, especially to understand the handwriting of the doctor. And if you're a doctor, you know what I'm trying to say. Because I know a doctor, I go to a skin specialist, and that doctor, right, you can't really understand what is written. Only the uh, person who's giving the medication knows what's written on that paper. Okay, he's probably got used to it over the years. That's why he understands that. But otherwise, I'm not able to make out one word of what's written on that paper. But if I have this information, right, now this is very small. This data is pretty limited when you look at it, right? Imagine if the patient was there, and I can give you a very example very close to me. My mom was in the hospital in the ICU a couple of years back, all right? And in the ICU, right, there's a lot of documentation which happens. There's information which is captured every hour. The nurse will come and capture the vitals of that particular patient, how the patient is feeling. Every hour, the nurse is going to capture that data. So in the end, right, what you get at the end of 7 days, and she was there in the hospital for approximately 7 days in the ICU and 2 days in a normal room. So every day you're getting that information. So this data which you see, right, is not going to be so small. It was a very big file. It was like as big as, probably 100 pages or so. That information has to be mined by a medical coder to find those codes which are going to be used for billing. So you can understand the gravity of the problem, in the sense it takes a long time for that medical coder to really go and search for those codes. And what is really important is that if he does a mistake, what is going to happen is it's going to affect the accounts receivable of the hospital. It's going to delay the payment but which the hospital is going to get from the payer, for that matter, from the insurance company, right? That is what is more important, to do the right coding. Even in Indian hospitals now, they do ICD-10 coding. So when I look at this, right, if I look at this, there were two major problems which were identified. This is for a particular patient. There were two major problems which were identified at the admission of this, I think it's a child, all right? Mood swings, oppositional and defiant behavior. Now, and there is a lot of other information mentioned over here, that he was probably even given some medication, if I'm not mistaken. You see his blood pressure over here, all right? And you see, yes, the medication, etc. All of this information was given to this particular patient. So now I want to mine this information, and we'll see what really a medical coder does. If I run this, right? If I run this, let's see. Hopefully, it'll run, and we'll get an output. Yes, we get an output. All right. So when I look at this, right, you can imagine what a medical coder does is without these colors, without all these markings which you see over here. So you see this mood swing, it's highlighted as green. It's telling me it is a problem. If you look at this again, this is the mood swing, oppositional behavior. What was the treatment given? It's identifying segments where that treatment word is mentioned, right? Or rather, it's going to identify that, okay, this is what the treatment was given to this particular patient. He was given psychotropic medications. this is again a problem. This is the mention of the word, it's a drug. Okay. So here, right, what ultimately this tool is trying to do is trying to depict what a medical coder really looks at. Out of this entire 100 lines, the medical coder has to search for these problems. If he misses even one problem, right, it's going to be an impact on the overall, it's going to be a bigger delay for the hospital in terms of the claim processing. So like this, right, I can, this is what is a very very straightforward and very good example of what a lot of organizations are trying to do. Obviously this is from a medical coder's perspective. There's also something called as HCC coding. It's called as hierarchical conditional coding. So similar to medical coding, right, in HCC coding what you have to do is, it's primarily for, and again this is more from a US healthcare perspective. In HCC coding what you have to do is you have to send that claim to the government, and there you want to prioritize the risk of that particular patient. Again, that is over there also, these problems are important based on those comorbid conditions and everything, right? A risk score is assigned to that patient based on which the reimbursement happens. Okay, this is for primarily for government related Medicare claims, right? That is where all this information is important. The third aspect, which is important from a hospital perspective, is you want to make specific decisions. You can actually compare how well a patient is doing as compared to any other patient who has the same or similar conditions. All right, that's what you look at. So I'm going to pause over here to ask you whether you understood the use case, what I'm trying to explain. We are trying to just look at this information and convert it into something more meaningful in terms of problems or medication. We're trying to group that data, what we see at the top. All right, we're trying to group this information in terms of specific codes or structures, which can be a problem, which could be a diagnosis for that matter, or a medication for that matter, right? That is what is something we're trying to do. Does that help? Does that give you a good idea?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Harish, I
Yes.
just have a quick question here. So are
Yes,
you
please.
saying that CLAMP does the job of a medical coder using NLP?
Yeah, so when I look at it, right, it doesn't really do that good of a job. I'll show
Okay.
you. I mean, it does the same thing, but in my experience, there are other tools which are better than this. I found this. Actually, I had a demo of Cleany Think. I don't have access to it now. I had interacted with them earlier. So I'll show you one more example, right? I'll show you a different. I'll show you the same thing which is over here, and I'm just going to write, right. Just let me type this. I'm going to clear this, and I'm going to type over here. Patient comes to the hospital complaining of chest pain. Okay. Blood. When I run this, right, or probably it's just a demo version, which is why I'm not getting all the output. The other tool which is there, open source, is CTakes. I was not able to set that up because uh, I kind of lost my access to SNOMED. Okay, so you're right. It's giving me that it has a problem, which is chest pain, and he was given a particular drug. So this blood pressure, right, is telling me it is a test. But when you read this sentence, right, it is telling me the patient has a history of blood pressure in his family. So this blood pressure, right, is not the patient's problem. It is the problem of his family. That is where the NLP logic comes in, that you have to search for this word family. So if I give you this example, right, I should come back to the presentation. So here, when I look at, this is an output of Clinic Think, right? It tells me it is able to identify history of that patient. Okay, the known to have anemia with swollen tongue. There is no word written over here, history over here. So it is automatically converting this sentence into historical information for this particular patient. Make sense? At
Yeah,
least
that
that
makes
demo
sense
is
to
not
me.
giving, yeah, at least that demo which is there of clamp is not giving me that output which I am looking for. Probably it
So
is there in the code.
wouldn't it be better if you write if it's a high or a low pressure, because blood pressure is just a normal term. So if you didn't specify if it's
Okay,
high or low, will the
let's try that.
you know
Let's try that.
the language, yeah.
So primary, right? Any tool should be able to identify those medical terminologies. When you have that, right? This is high pressure, it's identifying problem, but it's not telling me that it is a family problem. Make sense? What I'm trying to say is that this word should be grouped in terms of, so in anything, right? It will come as family history. It will not come as history, it will come as family history over here. Make sense?
So
Does
is
that answer your
Clamp
question?
an open source tool?
No, just the website is showing me that I don't think it's open source. I haven't downloaded it. I haven't checked all the details, but I just saw this as an option. CTEX is open source. I have used CTEX, at least in my previous organization. We were trying to do that. I have used CTEX. But what is more important is that how do they really do this? What is important is how is somebody really identifying this information. So if I tell you, right, if I tell you that you need to convert this information into a code, what are you going to do?
Most probably pass the information and then try some correlation logic on it.
How? With what are you going to correlate?
Uh, I I would probably look for keywords here. Like pressure is a keyword for me, and then maybe
Yes. So
I'll.
how will you know that pressure? How will you know that pressure is the keyword that you need to look for?
I think initially you'll have to hard code some of the medical terminologies initially, like pressure.
Okay.
Like computer cannot itself
So
by.
how many terminology do you think there are?
I mean, there can be lags. There can be lags, but I think another different approach could be that you try and parse a lot of information, and then whatever comes in common, you say that this could be a keyword.
All right. So to solve that problem, right, there's something called as, so we saw codes over there. We saw ICD codes, right? So one of the biggest challenges for ICD is, right, it's not like an English terminology language. ICD was primarily built for billing purposes, right? So if you search for the word heart attack, right, you might not get that word heart attack. You'll get something else. You'll get myocardial infarction in that. You will not get the straightforward word for heart attack, which is where you have something called as SNOMED. So underlying, right, all of these tools use SNOMED because SNOMED is like an English language. And I explain that with an example over here. So here, right, I'm going to search for the word heart attack. When you look at it, right, you see the first word myocardial infarction. There is no mention of the heart attack word in this, but it still is talking of giving me that possible code which could be related. So SNOMED is much more stronger than ICD-10. ICD-11 is probably trying to get towards the way SNOMED is functioning. But here, right, if I search for this myocardial infarction, I'll get that SNOMED code. So what SNOMED has, the benefit is, so like you said, right, you want to create a list. You want to hard code it or you want to create a list. Ideally, what everybody is using is the logic of SNOMED. So when I look at this, right, I'm going to go to this browser of SNOMED. So here, did not come. Sorry, one second. Yeah, I probably clicked the wrong button. Yeah. So here, right, I have got the ICD-10 code for this. So what is the benefit of SNOMED is even a layman can write those words and choose that. That is what SNOMED has. It has underlying has a synonym. Rather you can create that synonym list using SNOMED. 1 second. Probably I've opened the wrong browser. Can I explain what SNOMED does? So even CTEX or any other tool, Clinythink also uses SNOMED. Most of these tools use SNOMED because that is the key to identifying. So if I again over here, right, I search for chest pain. If I search for chest pain, right, there are so many aspects over here. On the left hand side, right, you'll see it is a disorder. It can be a situation, it can be a procedure, it can be a finding also. So SNOMED has these semantic tags using which a person can find out, okay, is this word related to the healthcare aspect? So when you're building that logic, right, it's important to use something which is existing. So I would rather than hard coding that value, you should be using something like SNOMED, which also has an API, or you can even set up that entire uh, code system on your laptop or wherever you're using this logic. Right? Make sense? So I can search for anything over here, heart attack. Will give me all that information. So whatever we are saying, right, heart attack, it's telling me it is myocardial infarction. So this is where it has been able to match that. When you saw this AI magic, right, we searched for the word heart attack, it gave me this list. It gave me this information which was there, which you are seeing in the drop down. Make sense?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so this is where SNOMED is pretty strong. It is the most what do you say important aspect of it. So that is what we looked at, one example in terms of, and again, this is the iMagic uh, mapping which we are seeing, and we talked about how it's relevant from HCC coding and medical coding perspective. This is what really the medical coder does in terms of looking at that. We looked at this example also. I don't have, there is a white paper, I can share that with you of Clinythink. It has a lot of examples in terms of how really different organizations are using tools like this. And there is another use case of this we'll talk about later from a pharma perspective. So what do you think we should be talking about now? What do you think I'm talking about? I'm going to talk about now, or show you an example of. Any idea? What is the one word common in two of these boxes over here? Can you guys hear me? I like interacting, so
So we can hear you.
Maybe the chatbot.
very good. I think that was Yogesh. All right. So I'm going to show you something. I'm not sure which electricity uh, you use, right? If I look at this, if you go to Adani's website, right, to pay the bill, I'm not going to show you my electricity bill, all right, but I'm just going to show you it's there on their website. One second, it should come up. Where is it? Where is it? Yeah. So you see this, right? This is a digital assistant. This is an example of a very basic chatbot. So in my previous company, right, we were working with uh, another organization. It is based in Pune, and they specialized in building these chatbots. They call them some NLP bots, and we build a similar bot for their website. We build a web. I hope it's still there. Yes, I hope they have built that. Yes. Rather, I hope it is still there. And primarily the purpose of the bot was for anybody to go and answer questions about all the different areas. The customer could probably find out where exactly uh, they want to search for a specific information. So I don't see that over here, so probably they put that out. Right, so if I want to, I'm able to interact with this bot, right? But this is a very crude bot because what it does is it already has a list of questions inbuilt in it. And most of these bots really function in this way. The chatbot which I wanted to show, right, that was kind of dynamic in terms of you could ask a specific question, it'll answer that question for you. We built a bot for uh, Mondelez in my previous company. So I'll show you a example of what I wanted to show you. So this is you can even try this. This is what is the use of NLP. If I try a demo, right? Let's say I'm going to try a demo. It shows me a output. So I'm going to just put yes, start conversation. Okay. So what is your, tell me about your symptoms. So I'm just going to put headache. And it tells me I have identified the following symptoms, and it's answering that based on this headache. It's telling me that okay, have I missed something? I wrote only one word, so it's picked up that I have that headache for 1 to 7 days. Okay, dull and aching. So it's based on my answer, right? It's throwing me more questions. How severe is the headache? All right, it's mild, occasionally, or rather, let's say it happened only today. No, it cannot happen only today. Started gradually. Start. It's asking me a lot of questions, right? It's asking me like a physician would ask you, right? What is happening uh, when you are answering this question? So I have a cough, let's say. How many times do you cough? Based on whatever I'm asked, occasionally. No, no, no. Uh, One of these. No. So there are a lot of questions that are being asked, right? Running nose. These. These. I mean, I would still say it's pretty, in depth, but sometimes it might become really painful to answer so many questions, right? It's like you're at gunpoint and somebody's asking you those questions one after the other. I just want to get to the end now, okay? But sorry, I just wanted to explain in what depth it has gone into. It's probably going to give me, I have headache for 1 to 7 days. The symptoms are headache, cough and running nose, skipping meals. So what is telling me that possible diagnosis is based on influenza and could be related to influenza or sinusitis, and you should consult a doctor uh, in that perspective. So this is what this diagnostic assessment tool kind of does. So this is again another example of how you can use NLP based on whatever you are typing. So as of now, this tool really gave me all the options, right, based on certain keywords. I did not really try and drill down into this information, but this is where, again, where you're using NLP and in the back end actually.
Harish, another question here.
Yes,
So
please.
I don't comprehend how this is related to NLP, because it gave you prompts
Right,
that you weren't supposed to type. It gave you prompts that
right,
it already had pre-decided. The only keyword you gave is headache. So that is the
right.
only thing that was passed by it.
So this is the example over here, right? What I can do, right? I can even type this. Let me try this again. Let me. let's see how good this is. It's telling me this. It's trying to identify based on this sentence what I have written. Does that make sense? So it again depends on how strong this tool is in the backend. How easily is it able to understand this sentence and extract the keyword that I want? Does it make sense? I myself just wrote that one word. That is why I took that one word.
Yeah, but it still doesn't convince me a lot because it hasn't captured that information you have written past 7 days.
So that's what I'm saying. This is about this particular tool, how good this tool is. It's not that I've written it. It's about how good this tool is in terms of using NLP and how well it has been kind of leveraged by uh, in the way it's built.
Okay.
Most of the tools which you will find, right? Most of the tools you will find are in a way that you show that particular keyword. So here, right, that is why I wanted to show you the tool which was there on this particular uh, site. It because you can actually ask a question and it'll give you that answer. That is what is the purpose of. So I'm just talking about a specific use case where NLP can be leveraged. I'm not talking about that how good this tool is or not.
Okay. Okay. So if you go back to that HGS website, there is a button at the left that says
Oh
chat
yeah.
with it.
Yes. Sorry. Thank you very much. So this is the chatbot I was actually trying to look at. Let's see how. I mean, they built it a year back. Let's see if it's working. Chat. It's not a good bot. Sorry, this is not the bot. Sorry. So you're right. It's not able to answer this question, a simple question. The bot which we were working with, it had that option that if I ask this question, right, it'll take me to the site or it'll take me to the location where I will know about the healthcare services of HGS. So here it's not able to answer this question. So it's not, again, this is also not a good bot. Make sense? Hello? Does that answer your question or no?
Yeah. Thanks.
Coming back, right? So the other aspect which I wanted to talk about, and I don't have a demo for this, but this is where you're talking about a drug discovery life cycle, right? One of the aspects is obviously is identifying patients for clinical trials. And this is where, again, the tool which I was talking about, right, all in terms of Think, right? They have a tool called Clicks Enrich, which has that option. So what the tool does, right? It mines information in terms of all the clinical notes and tries to find out similarities of patient. Let's say, so what they had done, right? They had written an algorithm for 12 different types of uh, diseases for which somebody was trying to create a medication, right? And using that, they kind of find out similarities between each patient's notes. And what they were able to do was they were able to kind of mine the information of so many documents in a span of 15 hours. That is what they claim. And let me see if the video is going to play. Let me know if you will be able to hear the video. If not, let's see. Are you able to hear the sound? Or no?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Okay. Let me remove my this.
That can end up being very
Can you hear this or no?
time and
Yeah, it's audible now.
May, just ask Sarah. She's an executive at a leading pharmaceutical company sponsoring a new clinical trial. Sarah knows from experience that site selection relies on information about the site's previous trial performance, faith that the principal investigators have enough suitable patients, and a healthy dose of intuition. Sarah has identified Steve as a potential principal investigator. Steve works at a large medical facility that regularly participates in clinical trials. They're both fairly confident that he can recruit the patients they need, but it will mean sifting through mountains of medical records to find just a few eligible patients, a time-consuming and tedious process at the best of times. But what if there was a way to make this process quicker, easier, and data-driven? Suppose Steve's medical facility started using Clicks Enrich for clinical trials, a solution that automates the searching of unstructured data found in electronic health records. Clicks Enrich sorts through millions of documents incredibly quickly to produce an enriched list of highly eligible patients against the inclusion and exclusion criteria of a clinical trial protocol. In other words, investigators get fast access to a high-quality cohort of potential recruitment candidates to enroll in a fraction of the time. By using Clicks Enrich, Steve has the data he needs to predict whether or not he's able to carry out the trial on time and within budget before he commits. He can also start enrolling patients from day one, cutting his recruitment timeline from months or even years to just weeks. It also means that Sarah has tangible evidence about the quality, quantity, and location of her potential candidate sites. By providing investigators like Steve with precise study criteria, Sarah can compare data from all of the potential sites, covering hundreds of thousands of patients across the country, to see where the highest concentration of eligible patients are. So, not only can Sarah accurately determine the feasibility of the trial, where best to hold it, and how much it will cost, she's also confident that Steve can hit his patient recruitment targets more efficiently. Find out how you too can use this valuable information hidden in your unstructured data to find more patients for clinical trials in a fraction of the time, saving you time and money, improving your performance metrics, and enhancing your ROI. Visit clinithink.com now.
So you understood what the tool is kind of talking about? Got an idea? Can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir.
Right. Okay, I hope you got an idea, right? So this is, again, this is there in the paper of Clinithink. Now, one of the most important areas where organizations are looking at NLP, right? If you go to Kagel's website, there are a lot of papers which have been put on their website. And there are a lot of articles over there. There are more than 180,000 articles as of now. I had downloaded that data approximately 3 months back, and that time there were only 30,000 articles. Okay, and what they want organizations, what they want people to do is, right, answer some of those questions related to COVID. And I'll just show you an output which I kind of have over here. Yeah. So you're right. I've already kept that ready. I'm just going to run this. And what it does, right, I'm trying to mine those. And again, this is a very basic level in which I am trying to identify the paragraphs where these words are. I'm not saying that I'm answering those questions. I'm just giving a very simple way in searching for all these conditions and extracting that information from those papers, rather than manually looking at all that data and trying to search for that information. This is a very simple Python program. You can even think of it like a search tool, wherein you can search for this information from all those different sites which have been there, all the research papers which have been there. And people have been trying to answer those questions using the power of NLP for that matter. Okay, and if you want to look at the output also, you can just, if you want to really put it into a structure, I'll take this and I will put it on this side. I can even read it in English format if I want to. So on the left hand side, I see that in English format. So again, I'm not able to, what I'm doing is at this point, I'm just taking these comorbidities and extracting this paragraph or sentence which has that comorbidities. That's what literally at this point is being done. But beyond this, you can do a lot more. You can answer those questions which are there related to all those parameters. So I just thought I'll give you that example. And the final aspect, right, though this is not directly related to NLP for that matter, but I just wanted to demo this tool to showcase that there is something like this also out there. If you want to try something, right, and it has a lot of data over here, you can create your own cohorts and analyze. If you want to find data which is there related to, let's say, what was that? Yeah, so you'll get information related to these. So I just thought I'll show you this tool rather than just I had used this long back when we were trying to pitch something to the customer, right? I had seen this long back. So here I can find information to related to whatever I want from these terminologies. I can create my own query out of this data and explore this data. So I just thought I'll show you as a separate aspect of it. So any questions till now? Or I'll move to the last part of the presentation.
Sir, some of the questions are posted in the chat box.
All right, let me have a look at them.
Pradeep is asking, how is NLP helping robot-assisted surgery?
Okay.
Pradeep is asking how NLP is helping robot-assisted surgery.
Okay, 1 minute. Let me also try this. Try what? Just give me a second. Yeah, so here I'm getting problem as hypertension. There is no family history of problem. So again, this is also getting classified as a problem. The word no is not being taken by this tool. Okay. Back to this. So I'm not sure if there are any examples specific for NLP using robot-assisted surgery. I don't have an idea at this point of time. Okay, so I can look that up and get back to you. How is NLP reducing medical information department costs, right? So the example that we talked about, right? When you're looking at recruitment for clinical trials, right? The administrative cost itself gets reduced if I'm going to use a tool of, and the example which we saw, right? We saw this. This is what, when you're looking at manually, they were able to find 3 patients, right? They were able to get 2 enrolled. Here they were able to identify more than, 8,000. I mean, in the number of 8,000, right? That is what they were able to find out. And the patients enrolled, they were able to do that. They did this in 8.5 hours. Manually, it took them 66 hours. So you can easily calculate the administrative cost reducing by 58 hours. Does that answer your question? This is one way of how you can reduce that. In terms of a medical coder, right, there is a time duration affiliated with the medical coder doing the medical coding. Again, that person has to do that on time and correctly. What that tool can do is help that medical coder reduce that duration in terms of instead of, let's say, if it takes 1 day or 2 days, right? Instead of 2 days, he can probably do that in 4 hours or 6 hours, whatever that number might be. And there's going to be a saving based on that. And again, there's going to be a overall cost saving affiliated with that. Does that answer your question, Shabaz?
Yes, sir. Right, sir. Thank you, sir.
Any other questions?
Sir, you can move forward.
All right.
Yes.
So I just wanted to talk about the final aspect. Where is it going? So yeah, right. In terms of, so I'm talking in general about IT, if you get into the IT arena, what all roles can you play? So primarily, obviously the first role, right, you might get into might be a business analyst, depending on or a consultant for that matter, wherein what you do is you interact with the customer, understand the requirements, and share that same with the technical team. Why I say business analyst, right? Because most of you might be from a medical background or you understand the medical domain well. That is where when you speak to the customer, you might understand the language the customer is saying, and then you need to interpret that language for a technical person. That is what a business analyst kind of does. When I'm looking at a domain analyst, you might be focused on a specific domain that you understand primarily the, what do you say, uh, the pharma area, right? That's where you get into that domain consultant kind of a role. When I look at product analyst, right, there are a lot of EMR products which are there in the market. You have Cerner, you have Epic, you have Meditech. There are organizations like Accenture, right? They have a partnership with a hospital in the US. Okay, so let's say for Sanford or some hospital. Sanford is using the Epic EMR for that matter. So what they have, right? Accenture, Sanford, and Epic have a three-way partnership wherein Accenture is able to get their employees certified on Epic for that matter for a specific module of Epic. So like Epic admissions or Epic resolute billing, right? There are different modules of Epic. So they get that, they are able to get their employees certified. So they become a product analyst for that particular product. So you can get into that area. When I'm looking at a process, right, in the BPO world or in the KPO world, right, a person needs to understand the process because the KPO world is more driven by process. It's more driven in terms of how does overpayment work? How does underpayment work? Where am I missing on identifying my overpayments, or where am I missing on identifying the underpayments, right? That is where you can get into a process analyst. The other aspect when you can move in from a business analyst can be a pre-sales analyst. So what this pre-sale analyst does is works with the sales or uh, the team which is really facing the customer, the account managers and everybody, and identify new areas where we should focus on getting into the market, right? You want to build a new solution related to, let's say, fire for that matter. So fire is a new standard for data transmission, right? So this pre-sales analyst will identify new areas where you might focus on. Once you have gathered that experience, right, you can move into any of these roles in terms of pre-sales analyst, process analyst, product analyst, or domain consultant. And finally, when you have gained a lot more experience, you can actually even get into the role of a project manager, managing a team under you. This solution architect might not be that easy. It would probably require you to also have a technical acumen rather than just the domain acumen. So here, right, you would be providing a overall overarching solution for a particular problem the uh, end user is facing. So I just thought I'll give you an idea, and there might be other roles as well which are there in the market. And that's where I just thought it might be relevant because there are a lot of students on the call, right? So where could you fit in into this particular arena? So I just thought I'll mention some of the roles which are there. Any questions? Or should I look at the chat box?
So, sir, we have some questions in the chat box. I will yeah.
So what are the skill sets required for a business analyst? Primarily, many organizations, right, they look at, if you look at Infosys, right, they hire a lot of, and quite a lot of my students are there in Infosys. They hire a lot of physicians in terms of somebody who can understand the healthcare domain, and they were quizzed a lot on the overall healthcare scenario in terms of understanding of HL7 EDI. They were literally questioned on those aspects. All right, that is one way to look at it, what Infosys looks at. But in general, right, then as a business analyst, what people would look at is, do you understand the business well? Do you understand the domain well? You need not be from a physician background, but do you understand that particular domain well? Are you able to communicate well so that you can communicate to the customer? And do you also understand, and will you be able to translate that same to your team, right? So that is what is important from a business analyst perspective. Does that answer your question, Pradeep? Okay. So what is the scope of NLP outside the hospital setting into community or public health? So wherever you have unstructured data, right, NLP can be leveraged on that. I have not for public health, let's say, you know, I don't know. I'm not sure about community or public health, but community hospitals are there. They would also have data related to information which is there, right, which can be mined. All right. What is the role of a system analyst? The system analyst, the way I look at it, is more in terms of on the infrastructure side, not really on the healthcare IT side. I feel it's more on the infrastructure side.
Do we have any more questions? You can post in the chat box, please.
Sir, I have one question.
Yes.
Most of us have a medical background and we don't have much knowledge about programming or anything that has to do with coding and stuff like that. Where
Mhm.
do we stand in the market? Like, what can we expect, or where do, yeah, where do we stand?
So as a expectation, right? Uh, from a lot of companies, it is expected that you at least understand basic things like SQL, all right? Because
Okay, sir.
quite a lot of organizations that hire, right, they do look at those technical acumen. At least can you pick up that? Because if you work with Deloitte or if you work with a consulting firm, right, your major job is going to be analyzing the data. So I know a lot of doctors who have worked with Deloitte, and their primary job was to analyze data. They are, working on Tableau, they are working on SQL and stuff, right? So you need to have some of those tools which are very simple. Tableau is pretty simple, right? Anybody can actually learn that. There's no big challenge in learning Tableau for that matter. So those are some of those aspects which you should consider learning. Actually,
Okay,
even
sir.
in, if I look at TISS, right, their students are even taught R and Python for that matter. Even in
Okay.
KGS Somaya management, where they recently launched their healthcare program, right, there also the students are taught R. So it again depends on every organization. But yes, if you have that technical acumen and if you understand the business, uh, it might help you further that position. But again, it's how you use your knowledge in front of the way you present yourself to the what do you say, to the company, right, to whomever you're speaking to. That is what matters most.
Okay, sir. One more question. Which one is easy to grasp, or which is better for us? Like, I've heard that Python is getting a lot of attention these days, and SQL is not an open source. So,
SQL is pretty
like,
simple. SQL is simple, but see the way I look at it, right? If you start working on what, so I have learned R, and I know some level of Python, but when I learned R, right, I found it a little difficult to grasp Python, you know, somewhat, because it's little different. The interface is different. So whatever you take up, right, you'll find it easier to learn that first. So there is no difference. But yes, a lot of organizations are focused on Python because Python is more a complete programming language. R is primarily used for statistics. It has a very good tool for statistics. Not that Python does not have that, but Python has a lot of good packages when you really want to look at mining X-rays or any other information for that matter, the high-end use cases. Python is much more stronger as compared to R.
okay, sir.
So is there any more questions you can ask? You can unmute yourself and you can ask. So, okay, I don't think so anyone have any questions. So, sir, thank you so much. I would like to thank Mr. Harish Rizwani, sir, for his time and sharing his knowledge and experience with us. I would also like to thank all the participants for attending this webinar and making it a success. Thank you so much, sir, for your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.